Okay, so in part two, what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at how to construct this roof, the kind of technique I used, and then adding some details to the build. So sort of the rope work, some of the planking that goes all the way around. You can see that planking, and then the sort of final slope here, and then quickly showing you kind of the base I did. But the base is a fairly standard base, but I'll show you that in the video as well. So yeah, hope you enjoy it, and let's go.
Okay, so one of the things we're going to be looking at a lot is the kind of rope around the joints. And effectively this is really easy to do. You just take a little bit of hot glue and then some rope or string and twine and just make sure it's stuck in there. And then once you do that, you're just looking for an angle where you can wrap it round so that it covers the supports that we've put in. You'll see I kind of decide to go round this way and then up and around, and effectively I just do that. I just cut off a decent amount of string and then I just keep doing that until you've got a nice sort of chunky looking support in there, and it just adds such a nice detail and it's so easy to do. And yeah, there's that one. Sort of basically that's all I'm going to do on that one. And then if I want to mix it up a little bit, I'll do it kind of going both ways, or I'll do it in a couple of them. You can see on this one down the bottom left I've used like a matchstick with a blob of hot glue on, just so it's like a bolt holding the rope down even further. So all those little techniques just help to add a lot of detail to the build and make it look really cool when it's painted. So effectively I'll just cut 3 strips of this thicker balsa wood, and then I'm going to cut them down into sections for whatever I need. It's really useful just to cut some stuff in advance if you know you're going to need some, because then you kind of can grab them and glue them on whenever you're going to need them. You can see like the small sketch I started doing. We're going to use these sticks to basically create the structure of the roof. And what I've done is I've created kind of like a, I guess like a template, just a width, so I can quickly put them together and then just position them with the stick that I cut for the right width. You can see how it's sort of fallen together because it's only hot glue, but once we've got the fabric on there, that'll toughen that up a lot. So it's just trying to get this structure in place so that we can then start to flesh out the roof a little bit more. And then I create 3 of these, so it's using 6 sticks, I think. Yeah. But I create 3 of these and then I kind of glue them on. Further down the line I realised that I didn't really want to glue them on, but it did make it a bit easier because I wanted to lift the roof off. But it made it a little bit easier because I can actually position them and get them glued in and kind of have them in the right place. Whereas if I didn't glue them on, I think this might have been a little bit difficult. And then finally the next thing I do is I just round off those edges so that they look like kind of, they don't look like planed timber. That's what you want to try and avoid. It's, you know, orcs in the wild just chopping down trees and stuff and using them. And then the other thing I do, which I didn't cover, is I create the points on the end of those as well. What we're doing now is we're creating planks for the side of the hut, so the floor that goes around the outside of the hut. What I'm using is lollipop or popsicle sticks and then small coffee stir sticks to stick to the back. You can see that just helps them sort of stay together a bit. So I create 6 of those to go around the outside. And next I'm using some of this thicker sort of strip again, and this is going to create those points that go around underneath the planks. So I need 6 of these. I think I just had enough. Like, I didn't have any more of this, so I was thinking, oh, I'm going to have to stick some thicker pieces together, which would have been really a bit annoying, but luckily I just had enough. And then round off the edges and create a point. We're going to basically create a really sharp point on these. So yeah, just keep going until you get to a nice point. The other thing I do, which you'll see briefly in a minute, is I make sure it's not really sharp on the end, so I just quickly file the end off, but keep that sort of nice point. And there is like a little stake basically that we're going to put around the outside. Just position them all around the outside like that, ready for the planks to sit on top of. Okay, so I'm just hot gluing these on now. I'm using plenty of hot glue, just put a massive blob and then just position them in like that. And there we go. They just really give that feel of Warcraft Orc as soon as you add them. They just look really cool. I really like them. Okay, so now we're doing these planks. The thing which might get a little bit difficult is you're trying to get the angle of the hexagon from where your walls are. So effectively I'm making a mark and then I make a second mark. I cut this and then I position it. Place it in, and that's going to be one of the planks that goes round, and then effectively we just need to line those up with the other planks and make 6 of them that go all the way around. And that's going to really sort of, you can see just by adding those, that really brings it to life. Okay, so this is really cool. Like, the roof turned out amazing, way better than I thought it would. I've just got some plain fabric, kind of cotton I think it is, and I'm pinning one side down. So I'm lining. I've pre-cut like big triangles that are bigger than I'm gonna need, and then I pin them down, and then I just make a mark so that I can cut them to size. You can see basically I'm gonna go down there and then all the way up there. Doesn't matter if you get like pen on where we're going to be cutting them, because we're going to be painting it later anyway. Had to swap and use these scissors because my scissors are obviously blunt and they can't quite cut fabric. And then to attach this, I'm just using a little bit of gel super glue. I probably could have used PVA, but the fabric has a tendency to just fall into the heart, so I wanted something that was going to be a little bit quicker. And this gel super glue just stuck it straight away. It was really good. Also stuck my fingers a little bit, but what I found out quite quickly is you don't need to put the gel super glue over the top, underneath, sorry. You can actually put it over the top of the fabric and it'll soak through because the fabric's quite porous. And there, so we've added all of those, and they are effectively just triangles stuck in. The next thing will be to add those bones on, but we want to toughen that up, so we will be adding some PVA glue to the roof at some point. The next thing is to add some texture to this, so I want it to look like kind of stacked hides, or not cardboard basically. So I'm adding loads of glue to this, to the whole thing, the whole walls of the hut, and then I'm going to put on pieces of fabric just randomly positioned. That gives quite a cool texture in the end. If you have a slightly thicker fabric, I recommend using it, because once you add the PVA glue, it does tend to merge and kind of sort of disappear slightly, the edges. You can see where I've got really nice edges on there, but once you add the glue over the top again like this, you do kind of lose those edges a little bit. This did turn out really well. I was really pleased with how it turned out, but I think if you've got slightly thicker fabric, or even card, you could use card, but it'll give you quite a flat texture, whereas the fabric has those kind of the sewing, the knit in it, so it helps a little bit. Okay, so the next thing we're doing is adding some PVA glue to the roof. This is really important because it helps toughen it up, and when we do the thread work through it, if you don't do this, it's quite, well, really difficult. I just add some glue to it, just make your life a lot easier. Also, just it helps kind of toughen up that structure a little bit. So I go around the whole top and just cover it. Okay, so yeah, we're at a pretty good stage now. We've kind of got the main structure going, and we've got the roof, and we've added some texture, and we've added the planks on the sides. The next thing is to add spikes to the top, so to give it that kind of, orc feeling. Add some points wherever you can, spikes, anything that makes it look a little bit more aggressive. So I'm basically adding a massive ball of hot glue right in the top of the roof, just where those sticks meet. And then I've pre-cut some cocktail sticks, and effectively I'm just poking these in to create, I guess, like bone spikes in the roof. I think that just makes it look really cool. Yeah, it's looking really good. Really pleased with it. Those spikes especially, and the rope that hold the other joists together. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the kind of walkway that starts in the middle underneath the turret, the tower, and then works its way all the way up around the outside, so that you can visibly see where miniatures could stand, but also they can make their way up. I think this really adds a lot to it, even though it's quite a small thing. It just gives you that kind of, like, because you could stop here if you really wanted, and you could just add a rope ladder, but the problem with that is you kind of don't get that feel of varying heights, and I think anytime you can add that to your terrain just makes playability a lot better, especially for war games, but even for RPGs. Like, height is sometimes forgotten, and I think if you can take advantage of that, it just adds some kind of anxiety to the players, which is always good. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just cutting this first plank to length, and then I'll cut an angle on it as well. So I sort of make a rough kind of guess at what the angle's going to be. It doesn't matter too much, but as long as it's not going to have a weird sort of angle when it goes on the base, I think cutting it at an angle allows you to blend it into the base a little better. Now just sand that off a little bit. In hindsight, what I should have done with these as I added them is I should have beveled them. This one in particular, because it was really hard to get to. So I should have kind of made it look worn at this stage just before I put it on. But I didn't. I just went and glued it on. So I think you end up with a really nice kind of feel when you do it all together. But that one in particular, I didn't. It felt very separate anyway. Okay, so I'm marking this out, but I realise when I mark it out, it's way too small. So I make it bigger in the end when I actually cut it. But effectively, it's like a flat platform that's going to allow me to do another plank going further up the tower. Now just use a bit of hot glue and just place that down. So this is how I did all the planks. Basically, I did one plank going up with a square base, and then another plank, and then another one. I basically went all the way around the tower until it reached up to the top plank, and it worked out really well because in the end it went straight to the door. So another thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to add those kind of spikes in again, just some slightly smaller ones with a thinner strip, but I'm going to point them again, make a point out of them, and just add them to help reinforce the walkways going up. So I've added those little small spikes in just as supports going up, and I think they really help. They look really cool. And then another thing I want to do is I want to add some angled pieces in, just as like further reinforcement, as though they've been added over time from battle and things like that. Yeah, these just help sell it as though it's kind of makeshift, sort of hung off the edge and then needed reinforcement when it's falling over time and things like that. So I just add as many in as I can without it looking stupid. So I just, add one in every so often, especially if it's fairly well hidden. Like, I think that makes quite a big difference, because the more people will look at something, sort of they'll pick up all these extra little details that you've added in, and I think that's what makes a really cool terrain piece. So you can see I've added a couple in there. I've added one in there, which looks pretty cool, and then the further one just down the bottom left. And I think they just add they add strength to it, but they also just make it look really cool. So this is where I decided, oh, hold on, I don't want the roof to be attached, so I just go in and cut it off. But actually, it just pulls off because the hot glue isn't like amazing at holding that balsa wood. So it just pulls off, which is really cool. I want to add a few little details. So I'm adding this wire. I could have used rope, but I would have to have painted it with the PVA again. So I've just added some little coils of wire around the place to look like bits of rope have just been left behind. And then the next thing I'm doing is I'm kind of cutting this, what looks like worn or like kind of broken cloth. And I'm basically going to add like a strip of it to the whole top of the watchtower, so you'll see it kind of, as I'm adding it there, I'm going to add it all the way around. And that did help break up that kind of flat pattern. Especially when you see it painted, it gave me a really nice line to go on and paint. On this, I'm just using a bit of super glue just to get it down, but I do finish it off with some PVA glue on top. Yeah, it's definitely worthwhile thinking about where you can add little bits of detail, because it does help. Especially with the door, it makes the door look a lot more realistic, like it's kind of got cloth hanging over the top of it. And then finally what I do is I just add some PVA glue over to the top. If you don't add this, like, you could get a really cool technique by not adding this and letting it flow, but I kind of wanted it to be a little bit more rigid. And yeah, you can see it looks pretty cool. So here's where we do the roof kind of stitch technique, and effectively what I'm doing is I'm drilling loads of holes with the pin vise so that I can get through it with a thick needle with the rope. Effectively, if I didn't drill those holes, it'd be almost impossible to just push them through. You probably could get it through, but this just makes it way easier. So drill the holes, push that through, and then pull the rope through. And then effectively I mixed up the stitching so that you could get that kind of feel of like chaos and repairs, that sort of organized chaos that the sort of horde feel like they've got. And a couple of them I crossed it over, and then a couple of them I did it straight. And you can see there, it looks pretty cool. Also added a little patch to the front, so I knew where the front of the roof needed to go. And then the final thing I do is I basically go around all of the planks and just round off the edges to make it look less kind of manufactured.
I hope you enjoyed that, guys. This is part 2, so then part 3 will be along shortly. The main thing I wanted to show you was wrapping the rope around the legs, because that adds such a cool level of detail and is so quick and easy to do. And the planking as well, kind of basically beveling off those edges and then cutting some holes, which I'm not sure if I've shown you, but basically sort of you see that big hole there, just cutting some holes in the plank so it looks like worn wood. Just turned out really well. I'm really pleased with it. I can't wait to show it to my players. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed that video. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment below if you'd like to see any more sort of video game type terrain or things like that. And yeah, stay tuned for part 3.